Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Resources Committee. I am Councillor Peter Hall. I'm the chairman of the committee. Members and officers have their name in front of them for ease of reference. In order to assist in the process this evening, I must ask everyone to ensure their mobile phones are either switched off or on silent mode. We would be grateful if you remain quiet whilst the meeting is in progress. I would like to remind everyone present this meeting will be filmed by the Council and broadcast live on the internet and will be capable of repeated viewings. If you're seated in the Council chamber, it is possible that the cameras will capture your image. By your presence, you are deemed to consent to being filmed and to use the use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting or for training purposes. Finally, there are no planned fire drills this evening. If the fire alarm goes, please evacuate the building immediately via the emergency exit on the back left-hand side of the room or through the way you came in. Thank you. Getting to the agenda. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies have been received from Councillor Bath and Councillor Watts.
I believe Councillor Bernie Davis. Members, declarations of interest, please. Minutes of the previous meeting. Oh, thank you, Councillor Nick, and seconded by the Vice Chairman, Councillor Chris Jameson. Those in favour? Oh.
Got an addendum
yes.
to those minutes this evening. I just wondered whether members have had time to read them, Chairman.
Have we all got a copy at the moment?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that was from Paul Hudson, leader, and we'll do that at the end of the meeting if that's okay, when that comes up. We don't want to do it. On the minutes, right? Yeah. Okay, we'll have it now then. So. Yeah. Any other comments? Let me note it. I'm pleased it has been passed to Ross and Roberts, the enforcement agents. We thought that'd be the best thing, and Paul Hudson phoned this afternoon to see if he was needed, and because we got it written out, I didn't think it was necessary for him to come over, so we're happy to note the minutes. Thank you very much. Important is the walls around the Priory. It's our responsibility, and I think that the report has been very well prepared by Mr. Ashley Harman. It's a very thorough report, it's very accurate, and it really is a credit to him for how particular he's been with all the information we've got. And thank you very much, Ashley, for this. It's very straightforward. Would you like to introduce it, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. This report responds to the Priory's request for an additional £100,000 contribution to wall work around the Priory. There is already £60,000 in the capital programme, which is being spent on some walls around there, and there's urgent works. That is separate, and those works are separate and distinct to this report. And just to give you an update on those, the consents have all now been granted in the last month or so. So we're now going through a handover on that to John Ross's property and engineering team to actually start the implementation of those. But I come back to the body of this report. As you can remember, the 30th of May, the request from the Priory, I mentioned at the time we did need to do some due diligence on it. And the first things there was to sort of identify and clarify which walls are included. And I've shown those approximately on the Appendix 1, which is the architect's drawing. And some of them have railings and gates in them. And of course, the main gates, the Priory, are also included there because they are part of the boundaries of the site and they all need work doing on them. I've also clarified which walls aren't included or they're excluded. One is the mausoleum. One could say that's a wall in Church Hatch. We've had a look at that and said it's in relatively good condition at the moment, but may need work in another 5 to 10 years' time. One wall we weren't able to look at is a very tall wall which runs from essentially the mill stream upwards, more or less at the east gable end of the Priory. And of course that's the other side of the mill stream, has vegetation on it at the moment and we can't see it. So at this stage I've not included that in the budget for the actual works of the walls. And there are 2 other walls I recall now. If you're going along Key Road and just before you go into the Priory car park, there's a couple of walls either side of those. The Priory didn't ask us to look at those at this stage, so I've excluded them. The council does have responsibility for all these walls, and under the closed churchyard and also the various areas which we lease in from the Priory, including the car park and the Priory Gardens. The report outlines the scope of works, and one of the first things to do is actually temporarily remove vegetation so you can actually see the walls and then assess the extent of the repairs. Some of them have got quite a lot of vegetation over them, and you will need to do that. There's some foundation work to one of the piers of the main entrance gates. If you look at it, it's leaning over, it's braced at the moment, but the gate doesn't close. And when you start looking at the gates and the railings adjacent to them, they are in very, very poor condition. They're corroded, there are bits of where they've started to separate, so they need a thorough bit of work doing on them. There are areas where there are roots of vegetation growing in the walls. They need to be cut out and the walls stabilised as part of the repairs process. Then that leads into pointing, masonry, rebuilding, stabilising, copings and lintels. And as I mentioned, there's quite a bit of ironwork repairs to do on gates and railings. Redecorations where appropriate. A lot of the need for the works is largely about some of the trees which have grown in and around the site. I haven't included anything in the estimate for dealing with trees because that is being dealt with by other colleagues under other applications ongoing at the moment. We will have the benefit of those when we come around to doing the work themselves. The cost estimates, you'll note that the Priory asked for £100,000 and you'll note that they have risen significantly. I make no apologies for that. It's robust estimating. I've taken inputs from the Priory's conservation architect who's done a lot of work around the Priory over the years and has reasonable rates. We've subjected those to some sensitivity from a quantity surveyor, which has then refined those to make them actually probably a little bit more accurate. But there are some cost increases which are outlined in Appendix 3. The rates for the original worth £100,000 worth of work are £108,500, and that's through the process of being more rigorous about them. There's additional works that we identified when we were clarifying the walls as we were going round, and that comes to about £16,700. But what wasn't allowed for in the figure which had been given to us by the Priory were things like prelims, the contractor's costs for setting up site, insurance, health and safety, site facilities, provisional sums, and we've identified one of those linking towards the gates areas, professional fees, some of the contingencies. And of course, looking at the timescales, I've allowed for inflation for the next couple of years because part of the issues with dealing with these walls are the need to get the appropriate consents, which does take some time to achieve because it's very sensitive. I've also included another £6,000 to get access to this wall, which I mentioned earlier on, and to be able to survey it and see what needs doing on that. That may then need to come back for a separate bid down the line. I don't know yet because I can't see the condition of it. And then, of course, the mausoleum may be subject to a bid in many years' time. Looking at the timescales and resources, whilst there's some urgency to do these things, there's going to be some time to actually undertake the design and getting consents. Our internal resources are all committed, so we're going to need to probably outsource to appropriate specialists to take this work on. And looking at that, I don't think we're, with our present commitments, going to be able to start the project until early 2019. As I've mentioned, statutory consents do take some time to achieve because they've also got to go through historic England as well. And I would suggest that the project plan would mean that the actual works themselves, because they need to be done during periods of good weather and not frosts, would be summer 2019, spring summer 2019, hence the inflation allowances. I believe the report is full and comprehensive. There are recommendations for bids from funding from unallocated resources, and there are funding there available for that. But of course, as each of these is over, or the main 225,000 is over the £100,000 threshold for a key decision, the decision will have to be referred to council as well. Thank you. Any questions?
Ashley, for that brilliant report. Members, any questions, please? Councillor Colin Bungey.
Thank you, Chairman. Ashley, on the walls that we're looking at, when we did our town centre strategy walk round, it was noted that a lot of the walls on the banking of the mill stream were in a somewhat precarious condition. They aren't included in this. That's going to be presumably, hopefully included in the other work, or is that just strictly trees?
If I can just respond on that, Chairman. At the moment, I don't believe it's certainly not included in this request for funding. The works to the walls around the banks of the mill stream, Convent Walk, are not included in this, or they're not included in the budget for the urgent wall repairs, which is ongoing, which I mentioned at the very start of this report. I don't know if anybody's done an assessment of those walls and the works required for them, or indeed whether they are being funded by the Heritage Triangle project. But I think, again, some of those are affected by the trees and vegetation growing through them. And of course, once that's done, it will enable an assessment to be made. Just to recall, there is one exception to that I'm aware of, and that's at the northeast corner of Church Hatch, just behind the constable's house. There's a brick wall which returns around there. That is part of the £60,000 worth of work which we're doing shortly.
Councillor Margaret Phipps, please.
Thank you, Chairman. On 319, you were just talking about the timescales and the resources. You won't be able to award contracts before the summer of 2019, by which time we will be part of a unitary authority, and the contract at that time, when we join, presumably in end of April, will not have been awarded. So will it be secure that this will actually happen, although the contract will not have been awarded at that time?
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. Nothing is certain, but I would suspect that if it's in the capital programme of a preceding council, then it would be delivered. Clearly there will be members from Christchurch that will be on the new council, and so can make representation if there is, and I doubt very much whether there would be a move to not fulfil this project. I would say, without giving you any guarantees, that it's very, very unlikely that something like this will be removed, because it is an obligation on this council and any future council to actually maintain those walls. There will be a potential a public health issue if they're not. So, I can't foresee, personally speaking, that it would be removed from the capital programme.
So to be clear then, it's not certain that it would definitely happen, but it's unlikely that it wouldn't happen, is what you're saying, really. Yeah.
I think given the scale of the work, which in terms of the scale of the new authority is quite small, I don't think that anybody would want to take it off the capital programme. I think there has been sufficient work done to demonstrate that it is something that is actually required, and would be required in the future if it was taken off. So it would be imprudent to actually not undertake the work.
Also, Councillor Margaret Phipps, we've got the same situation with the Regent Centre where the work can't be done. We put some money to, and I was assured that that would still happen, even though Christchurch won't be here. Members.
More of a comment, really. I assume that the work on these walls will be carried out in a sympathetic manner using sympathetic materials. And I'm saying this because when the entrance to the Priory car park wall was repaired, a nice old weathered wall has now got a pier there of modern red bricks, which is horrible and totally out of keeping. And I would hate patches of red brick to start appearing on some of our ancient walls. So can we be assured that appropriate materials will be sourced?
Councillor, obviously we're quite a long way from that at the moment, but the work will be subject to quite a bit of scrutiny, I would have thought, from Historic England and the other statutory consent orders, and also the Priory as the council's landlords. And certainly in the conversations I've had with the Priory and their architect, the whole thought has been to do it in a very sympathetic way to what is there. The specifications that have come forward for the work that we're doing at the moment have come from the Priory's conservation architect, just so we can move that forward. So again, it is adopting the appropriate route. Part of that is also going to be procuring the appropriate people with the appropriate skills to do this sort of work as well.
Thank you, Mr. Harman. Any other questions? Well, before we go to debate, it's such an important issue, and the Vicar did write to me, so I'd like to propose that, as set out in the agenda, and I believe the leader of the council, Councillor David Flagg, will second that.
Thank you, Chairman. Happy to second. I'd just like to say that, first of all, thanks to the officer for a very comprehensive report. And I'd just bring to attention of members item 3.2, which clearly sets out the legal responsibilities of this council to undertake those repairs. So on the basis of that, I'm more than happy to second the proposal, Chairman.
Very much, Leader. Also, members, would you? We've had one councillor in the audience that has supported this. He's been driving this scheme forward. Wanted to ensure that it came to this committee. So, can we have Councillor Colin Jameson to say a few words, please?
Thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to speak to this very important matter. I'm grateful for the work that you have done and grateful for the work that the officers have done to bring this very important topic forward, so that regardless of what happens to the future of the borough, then we'll know that the heart of the town, the Priory, will continue to look as pristine as it always has done. I'm grateful for some of the work that we're doing, which I know is our responsibility to do anyway, but I think this just adds value to the work that's being done. So thank you all for that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Colin Jameson. Right, members, any debate on this, please? Oh, Vice Chairman, Councillor Trish Jameson, please.
Only very briefly, Chairman. I just think this is a fantastic project anyway, and it's another really bit of legacy we're going to leave, I think, within these walls. They do need doing. It'll look so much nicer, and I just hope I'm here long enough to be able to see it finished.
You'll be here long enough, Madam Chairman. I hope so. And it is a good legacy. So, so can we go to the vote on this, please? Those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Harman, for your efforts and for being here tonight. I wish all our reports were so comprehensive. Thank you. Right, we go to the forward plan. It's the next item on the agenda. Nicola. That's item 5. There's no written reports.
None received, Chairman.
Right. And the forward plan, please, Nicola.
Thank you, Chairman. The forward plan is as included on the agenda. Obviously, we've covered the walls around the Christchurch Borough site report tonight, and there's the Q1 budget monitoring report for your next meeting in October. At the briefing, members present did ask about what we do for the forward plan for the rest of the months, and it was suggested that officers maybe bring a report to look at any projects that were ongoing and what timescales was left, what was the progress report. Do members want to include that onto a forward plan to have an update on any process?
Yeah. Councillor Leader David Flagg, because also it's the play area should be on there.
Thank
Councillor Flagg, please.
you, Chairman. Took the words right out of my mouth.
Sorry.
But, we did agree a project for upgrade of the play areas throughout the borough, and I would like to see that as a regular item on the forward plan, if that's possible. Thank you.
I think that's very important. It should be on there. It's something that we're spending a lot of money on, and it's an asset that we want to leave for to show what Christchurch can do. Colin Bungey, please. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. Another item that concerned me is the new toilets in Saxon Square, which seems to have come to a grinding halt. And my understanding is that the tenders had come back in somewhat of an excessive amount, and it was going out to re-tender. Now, like the Priory walls, I think it's very important that we get this started before May next year. We need to have this on the books and started. They were supposed to be started this summer. It didn't happen. And it's very important this does happen, because we need those new toilets for our visitors. So that needs to go on the agenda. I'm not sure whether it comes under resources or community services, but resources are the financial purse string, so I would hope it would come back here and we'd have an update on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Colin Bungey. In fact, the tenders did come in very much higher than anticipated. It should have started as soon as the food fest finished. They should have started on the toilets, but the estimates that came in were very much higher than anticipated. There were many, many thousands per square metre, way above the estimate. So that's being looked at and it's been re-tendered. So we should have an update, and I'd probably go to community services quite soon. The Mayor, Councillor Leslie Dedman.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd like to bring to the next meeting the costings of a project that I'm trying to put together, which will not be a costly exercise, but it's to try to gather in the heritage that we have in this borough and outside. I know there are some things that artefacts and various other papers, documents. It's going to cost a little bit of money. I think it's very well worth doing in this, the last year of the Borough Council. And I've got various other people interested in doing it, so we may get grants from other sources. But this project has to be done basically by March or April to give us something to look at. So what I plan to do, if it's all right with you, Chairman, and if it can be put on the forward plan, is for the 24th to bring, even if it's in draft form, the outline of the project that I propose. I know that other people around the table are very interested. I know the past mayor is interested. We have a lot of heritage. We're going to have to hand it over to somebody or keep it in one place. So I'd like to bring that. I don't know what to call it exactly, the heritage project, whatever. But if that could be minuted, that I'd like to bring that next time. And I don't know if it should go to scrutiny or any other committees, but I'll let that be decided.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I think it's important. Our heritage is part of Christchurch, and it's a shame we're losing that. And I think it's very important that we do keep a record for future generations and see that we've really put it all together. And I'm sure that that can be minuted. I'm sure we can find some fund for the Mayor to do that. Other questions on that? Councillor Nick here.
There is a local company I know very, very well. In fact, I do know very well in New Milton that specialise in actually refurbishing toilets, etc., etc., etc. They are a big company, and I think will be worth forwarding a quotation request from them as well. It's Cubicle Systems, they're called.
Thank you very much for that. I think it's important if we can get it done at a reasonable price. And I don't think they're on the tender list. It did go out for tendering, and they could have responded. I think there's only about 4 companies that responded. So, and the cheapest one was still many thousands of pounds a square metre. Thank you all very much for coming. I think that's the end of the meeting, and thank you very much indeed.